So without further ado, and in the interest of time, I'd love to go ahead and present Chelsea Rose. And I guess we've got Jessa on here as well. And they're going to be jumping on. Oh, Zendo Project. Speaking of harm reduction, big fan of Zendo. I'll go ahead and leave it to the two of you, and we'll be talking about risks and harm reduction for creative explorers. Thanks so much for joining us, both of you. The stage is yours.
Amazing. Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Jessa, and I'm the programs director at Zendo Project. And I just had so much fun creating this presentation today, because I imagine so many people listening right now are not new to the psychedelic realm. And if you're anything like me, a deeply inspired and wildly creative being, which I imagine most of you are, you've probably been exploring the psychedelic realms for quite some time. And whether that be through actually taking a psychedelic, a substance, or maybe just through being extremely right-brained, imaginative, an alternative thinker. And the reason that I assume that y'all have explored these spaces in depth is because, from what I can tell, in order to create something truly meaningful, something that really moves people, you have to be willing to go to the deepest places within yourself. You have to be an explorer of the unknown, the liminal spaces, the in-betweens, the non-ordinary states of consciousness where real insight lives. And yes, I'm talking about the aspects of the psychedelic realms where colors become more vivid, your breath becomes more alive, and visions become more tangible. But I'm also talking about the depth that we find in these places where there's darkness and there's pain and there's grief and the vulnerability of being human. And so with that, I want to say that I'm thrilled that Alex invited Zendo Project to do this keynote today. Not just because it's an honor, but because it signals something deeper. It tells me she's acknowledging what so many of us in this space already know. That while psychedelics have inspired incredible bursts of creation, they also often take us to profound and sometimes uncomfortable depths within ourselves. And it's in those deep places, the grief, the confusion, the unraveling, where real transformation begins. And after more than a decade of supporting people in complex and challenging psychedelic experiences, what we've learned at Zendo Project is that with the right kind of care, those challenging and complex moments can become turning points, moments of insight and breakthrough and even healing. And so if we truly want to harness the potentials of psychedelics that so many of us are speaking about today, and that we've been seeing over the course of the last many months through the awards, the creativity and innovation and regeneration that is available, we have to be willing to walk forward together with care, with listening, with humility and attunement, and letting our hearts lead, so that we can reach these deep places within ourselves, and from there co-create the most beautiful and innovative and sustainable world possible. And I think maybe the chat feature is turned off. I had asked no, it seems like it's on. If anybody's heard of Zendo Project before, if you can drop an 8 in the chat. And we're going to be talking about the Zendo Project 4 principles of psychedelic care today, and you get extra points if you can drop one of the principles in the chat. And then I don't know if I'm able to see the chat. I am. It looks like it's just for panelists. Okay, that's okay. Well, basically, whether you've heard of Zendo Project before, whether you've heard the 4 principles before or not, my invitation to you today is the same. And that's to listen with fresh ears, I've heard these trainings many, many times and been, involved in this understanding of care for a long time. And what I've learned is there's no limit to the amount of compassion I can learn, how attuned I can become, and how caring I can become towards myself and towards others, right? It only goes deeper and deeper. And the deeper I can meet myself, especially in the dark and uncomfortable places, the more I surround myself with people who hold me there, the more I grow. And the more alive I feel, the more connected to life I feel. And this is where I can truly fulfill my greatest and truest creative potential.
Thanks, Jessa. Thanks for that incredibly beautiful introduction. Oh, always so grateful to have you and all the inspiration and creative vision that you bring to Zendo Project. Hi, everybody. I'm Chelsea Rose. I'm Zendo Project's executive director. I've been working with the Zendo Project since 2013. In our early years, we were with MAPS, and then these last few years as the executive director as our own nonprofit. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. Most of my therapeutic training is in crisis response. I managed our local crisis team at the emergency room for several years, and now I work as an on-call supervisor for folks who are in the ER, providing case consultations and support for anybody who's in a psychiatric emergency. And additionally, I've been working with DanceSafe for over a decade, supporting the back end, managing their reagent test kit program. So kind of a myriad of experiences in harm reduction and crisis support. Born in Missoula, Montana, currently live in Grass Valley, California. Yeah, and just excited to tell you all a little bit more about the Zendo Project. I'm just wondering about our slideshow, though. It looks like it's probably not up. So, Jessa, thoughts and insights on how to get that shared with everybody?
I'm speaking with them in the chat right now. We just can't see the slides if they're being presented, but
No, so this is yours here. So you can share yourself if you want to. Then you have the control also for when they show. But I can also share it if you want to. But if you
can share it, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
And should we just let you know to hop slides? Is that the best way to do it?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, if you want to hop onto that second slide, that would be great. Wonderful, cool. So this is a little bit about the Zendo Project. We are a community outreach organization focused on providing peer support and specialized care for folks undergoing difficult psychedelic or psychological experiences, primarily at large events and gatherings such as Burning Man. But also we provide training and education to a variety of different groups in our model of compassionate care. And the Zendo Project was incepted at Burning Man in 2012 by the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. At that time, Zendo Project was basically a department of MAPS. And since then, we've grown into our own nonprofit and offered care and training to thousands of folks. And so, we can skip to the next slide. So here's our mission. I'll just go ahead and read it to you. So the Zendo Project provides peer-based compassionate care at events and offers educational resources to communities and organizations. We support individuals navigating complex psychedelic experiences, emotions, and other non-ordinary states of consciousness, reducing potential harms and fostering opportunities for a deeper connection to self and others. And then on the next slide, I'm just going to start by giving you all a little bit of context about what harm reduction is. You can see the definition here, as well as some key points about it. Really, harm reduction aims to increase knowledge and awareness of the risks of substance use. I mean, and harm reduction is a big word, right? There's lots and lots of forms out there, and we really specialize in harm reduction as it relates to substance use. But there's many forms of it and really a very large umbrella. In the work that Zendo does as sitters, we really aim to create a well-informed community and to invite honest dialogue about drug use. And so harm reduction practices, they also help to destigmatize drug use to reduce the shame and guilt, and then therefore ensure accessibility to resources. So as psychedelics and non-ordinary states of consciousness, become more common for the sake of healing and growth, so do the applications of harm reduction services and how these services can be utilized to create more safety in these explorations that people are choosing to take. And I'll just say, likewise, non-ordinary states of consciousness can and will be experienced throughout people's lifetimes. And so, like Jessa mentioned, whether that's grief or crisis, the skill set really supports individuals and communities beyond psychedelic spaces and out into the world. And so, Jessa, you can hop to the next slide and share a little bit about non-ordinary states of consciousness.
Yeah, I'll just expand on what Chelsea was sharing, which is that, we've started prioritizing saying non-ordinary states instead of like altered states or psychedelic states. And that's because every moment has the potential to be non-ordinary, whether it's a walk in the woods, a deep cry, a creative breakthrough, a late night conversation, any moment that stretches us and humbles us, that's a non-ordinary state. And so, when we think about the tools and the education that we provide, we ask the question, so if those are all non-ordinary states, then when are these tools applicable? When is compassionate care applicable? When are the 4 principles, meant to be used? And the answer is always, right? These aren't just psychedelic tools, they're human tools. And compassionate care is not just reserved for sanctuary space for the Zendo, right? It belongs in families and communities and workplaces and in everyday moments. And non-ordinary states of consciousness aren't rare. We're navigating them all the time in grief and heartbreak and all of these things. So we really like this framing, and you'll hear us use this word a lot, and we just wanted to break it down a little bit more for you. And if you go to the next slide, we just want to share a little bit about how we've learned what we are sharing today. And Zendo Project has been offering event services for over 10 years, and in that time, we've been to over 56 events around the world. We have sat with over 7,000 guests collectively. Guests are what we call the individuals who visit our Zendos. So people who are experiencing these challenges or complex states. And then we've trained over 5,000 volunteers, which is pretty amazing. And with all that we've learned, we've really been expanding our education program. We now offer an online course. I think this year we're going to be offering it 8 times. Last year we trained 1,000 people with this course. So the number of people who are really learning compassionate care is definitely expanding in the world. And we're excited to share a little bit about these tools today with you. And if you go to the next slide. Yeah, we thought it would be fun to share a bit about our 4 principles of psychedelic care. And our full training is actually 12 hours. So today we're going to be speaking with you for just, probably 30 minutes total on the 4 principles. So if you're interested in what we're sharing about, there is like a very extended version of this, and each of the principles, like there's so much within each of them. So today will be very abbreviated, but I think let's just get into the first principle. If you want to go to the next slide, and Chelsea is going to share the principle of safe space.
Thanks, Jessa. Yeah, that on the triangle that was on the prior slide, you can notice that that safe spaces at the very bottom are really as the foundational piece of our 4 principles. And, the great thing about the 4 principles are really our core, the core of the message that we teach, which is how do we show up for folks who are in that state, and how do we create a space for them that is safe as possible and also provides containment for the possibility that that experience can become something that's beneficial or valuable for the person going through it. So So our foundational principle is safe space. And so I just want to start by emphasizing that safety is not universal. It means different things to different people. It's co-created, it's fluid, it changes through time and in any given moment. And because feeling safe means different things to different people, I always find it helpful to just pause, and think to ourselves, to each of you, like, what are the qualities of, for example, a physical space that might make you feel safe? So for me, I think about my living room, or I think about the temperature of a space or the lighting of a space. Like, fluorescent lights do not give me a feeling of safety, but warm and low lighting can feel very comforting to me. And then, another quality of feeling safe would be like, what does it mean to feel safe with your friends? And what qualities does a friend offer that allows you to feel like you can really be yourself, that you can be vulnerable? So, it just really depends on each person. It depends on the context, set and setting. We say that a lot. So you can go ahead and skip to the next slide. So, a primary focus for Zendo as an organization has been to create sanctuary spaces that support the safety of a guest who is at an event. And so, like I mentioned earlier, this, we're talking about a physical space in this case, like the Zendo itself. But the principle really refers to creating both physical spaces designed to help and support people to feel safe while going through difficult experiences. And it's evolved to really encompass the broader scope of what safety means, which invites, we call it the action of tending to safety, which is attending to the emotional and psychological levels as well. And so just given our understanding of trauma and cultural considerations, there really is no way to guarantee conditions that will create a sense of safety for everyone, particularly when we're attending to individuals who are members of marginalized communities. And so when considering safe space as a principle, the first thing, we always want to acknowledge is that we can't assume what conditions will create safety for any given person. It's a case-by-case basis, but what we can do is that we can tend to safety through dedication to collaboration, curiosity, openness, respect, attunement, and advocacy, really, as well as just doing everything we can having a commitment to preventing harm. So on the next slide, there's a couple helpful phrases here. So I will just share them. One example would be to say something like, and really, again, we're going to get into this a little more as we move through, but because we're kind of condensing it all here, I'll just note that our model is very non-directive. So, and you'll see how that integrates into our other principles that we're going to share with you. But, you could say something like, I will do my best to support you right where you're at. This is a supportive space where you're welcome to be as you are. I want you to be comfortable and have the journey that you're meant to have. So one of the resources that we provide in our training is a worksheet of helpful phrases, which can be used with whether you're working with clients or a friend or anybody really having a difficult experience. And I think we all know that pressure of feeling on the spot and like we need to say the right thing. And so when that comes up, this can be really helpful, a helpful resource. And it's just important to remember to breathe, to tune into ourselves, and really then respond from that place of being connected to ourselves versus feeling like you need to do something or you need to react. And if you don't know what to say, which will happen to all of us at times, is totally natural, then these phrases can really come in handy. So we'll be referring to this worksheet throughout the talk and giving you other examples of helpful phrases as we move through. And then if you want to hop to the next slide, for those of you who've not worked with the Zendo before, these are a few photos of our sanctuary spaces that we provide for our guests. So you just have a sense of, kind of what it looks like on the ground. We tend to often have round spaces, which can feel really nice in the sense of containment. And we really work to create an environment that feels non-clinical and non-medical, that really invites our guests to a sense of ease within the space. And so then our next principle, sitting, not guiding, Jessa's going to take a deep dive into that one. So if you want to hop slides, that would be great.
Okay. So sitting, not guiding, this principle is really about supporting somebody simply by being with them, right? It's not about having an agenda or trying to fix or solve. And when we are sitting, not guiding, we want to cultivate a calm and meditative presence of acceptance and compassion and care, and promote feelings of trust and security. And we really are letting the person's unfolding experience be their own guide, right? And if we go to the next slide. So when we are sitting and not guiding, we're not directing or having an agenda. We're not like guiding or steering the experience. Like I said, we're not trying to fix it. And we're not pushing some sort of breakthrough. And we're just letting the person's experience be the guide. And some examples of directive language, just so that you can kind of understand, like, this is what we do not want to say. We don't want to say something like, just surrender, or I want you to feel into the pain that you're feeling. We don't want to say things like, if you breathe, it will make you feel better, right? Instead, we're using phrases like, I notice that you're worrying a lot, and that seems to be uncomfortable, and I'm here with you. So if we go to the next slide, this is an acronym that we use to help us remember to sit and not guide. And the acronym is WAIT. Why am I talking? And I definitely use this a lot with myself. If I catch myself trying to say something while I'm supporting somebody, I just take a breath and think, why am I saying this? Am I saying this to ease some discomfort that I'm feeling based on their experience? Am I saying it because of some agenda that I have? Am I saying it because of some story that I have? Like, what's the purpose of what I'm offering right now? Is it for me or is it for them? And oftentimes when people are in these non-ordinary states, just being with them is the thing that they're really needing. It's not for us to say anything. And I've definitely found that to be true when I'm going through moments of challenge, Oftentimes, if people say something to me, it might actually distract me from what I'm feeling. And let's see. Yeah, there are some more aspects of sitting, not guiding, and we don't really have time to go into them today. I wanted to speak about attunement, but we do have some really amazing podcasts out there, one on the art of attunement and one on how to become attuned. So I recommend those. And also I'll speak in the end about our training that we offer. But for now, I'll skip to the next slide. And wanted to share these quotes with you all. So, sitting quietly in contemplative presence of another person, you are not only already doing plenty, you are literally creating one of the most important components needed for healing to arrive. And then another one, Ram Dass says, the quieter you become, the more you can hear. So if we go to the next slide, please. Oh, I was gonna actually, we'll stay on the last slide, and I was wondering if Chelsea could share an example of framing for the principle sitting, not guiding.
Yeah, happy to. This is really my favorite principle. I think because I'm such a do person, I'm like a get it done person, and so it's always a practice for me to realize that actually in a lot of instances you don't need to do anything but just be there, which I think these quotes speak so beautifully to. And, and I always say the principles are so applicable to all forms of relationships, but I really find them so applicable to being a parent. And I will catch myself, like, for example, my son, he's 10 now, but as he's been growing up, something would happen, like a toy would get broken and he would be devastated. And I would want to be like, we can get you a new one. It's totally fine. Wanting to really fix him having these big feelings. And over time, and he would get more mad and he'd get more escalated. And even at some points, he'd be like, just don't say anything. I just like the wisdom of a child. And so really over the years, I have really learned to put this into practice with him. And when he's upset, I just sit quietly with him and give him that presence. And it is incredible the difference it makes, just in that simple act of parenting through tough moments. So I just wanted to share that example and just really state why I feel like this principle is just so essential, especially in our productivity oriented culture, and really that need and want to fix things when really ultimately just being there is what's needed. So yeah, so you can go ahead and hop to the next slide. And I'm going to talk a little bit about our third principle, through, not down. And this phrase, through, not down, really makes me think of how often people will say to us when we explain what we do in our work, they'll say, okay, so you talk people down. And that phrase has become really common. And so we really emphasize, rather than talking down, we're talking through, or we're moving through, or we're going through. And really often the best thing for this is time, and allowing, in the space that you're in, allowing that time to unfold. So the skills of sitting, not guiding, that Jessa just went over really sets us up for the simpler and more nuanced skill set of through, not down, because they are similar. But while sitting and guiding is really about cultivating presence, like I was just talking about, it's about listening, being grounded, letting go of an agenda, and allowing someone's inner process to really guide the way and come alive. The talk through, not down principle pertains to when someone's having a challenging experience, really such as like a heightened emotional expression or exploration, such as grief, anxiety, confusion. And really you're there to support them to move through this bigger process. And so you can go ahead and hop on to the next slide. So, being with people who are in discomfort can be challenging, just like I mentioned with my son, right? I have this like innate desire to want to fix it for him because I don't want him to be suffering. And so when someone's in a difficult or challenging psychedelic space, it can bring up a lot of things for us as the sitter or as the person that's there witnessing what's happening. And so it may challenge our own edges. It may lead to discomfort. And we may want to talk them down from their experience, just to get to a sense of being more comfortable, and for them to be back to a state of feeling more comfortable in themselves. And we may have a fear about how long that's going to be when you're immersed in that difficult space. And certainly sometimes it can take some time for someone to work through something really big. So our approach when this is happening is talk through, not down, and this requires the unique skill of sitting with discomfort, sitting with complexity, or a challenging emotional experience, or even a grandiose emotional experience, where someone may have some really loud or big expressions, or maybe even they're expressing very loud or big happy expressions, but really just building the capacity in ourselves to sit through that bigness and to provide presence in those bigger experiences. So you can go ahead and hop to the next slide. So in doing this, in really like cultivating that capacity in ourselves and practicing that capacity in ourselves, and it's totally okay not to get it right. It is a practice unfolding. We're all showing up and really doing the best we can, but just bringing that intention back really makes the biggest difference. And by doing so, you're giving them, by giving yourself permission to really be in that space of presence, you're also giving them permission to be where they are in their process. And that can be so powerful. And so you can hop to the next slide. So, here we're really talking about trust, and trusting that whatever's showing up for somebody is something that they are being invited to learn about in their own life and in their own experience. And so to be calm and collected and a connected reflection of this learning, whether that's through curiosity, and just this cultivated presence that we're talking about. So this can be it can be a long process, especially when someone's not speaking very much. And so again, throughout a longer process, you're really tracking yourself and where you're at and how you can attune to yourself and then provide that presence to somebody. And if that's feeling really difficult, it's always okay to ask for help, to bring in other support. Sometimes we call it kicking it sideways because in the Zendo, there's many of us, so we can work as a team. And it can be trickier when you're by yourself. So those are things to think about if you're going to be supporting somebody in a journey, is what's the support you have for supporting yourself. All right, go ahead and hop to that next slide. Okay, so here's a couple more phrases. If a client says, I say client, it could be a guest, could be a friend, says, I feel so sad. You really reflecting back to them that I hear you feel so sad right now, and you can keep it brief and you can keep it simple and really focus on the emotion. Yeah, there's another couple examples there, but I'll just leave it at that. And then we can hop to the next one. And then there's a few more here. So again, we're giving people permission, letting them know that whatever's coming up for them is okay, that we're going to hold space for them to share their experience. And there's no expectation or obligation for them to do really anything other than be there. And, sometimes we fight the experience. We say what resists persists. And so you can gently remind people that if there's any part of them that could approach what's happening more gently, that could be supportive. And then we've got one more slide on helpful phrases. And this is just, again, little bits that we could reflect back to them when somebody is talking about their experience. You could say, that's really insightful. That's fascinating. Would you like to tell me more about that? Or you can inquire, are there any insights coming through? If you want to share something, you can ask, are you open to hearing a reflection? And then sometimes people really want that guidance. And if you're not feeling like you have a clear path on how to give that in a non-directive way, you can say, I'm happy to provide my perspective on that in time. But I wonder what would happen if you took that question inside and sat with that for a moment. So that is a little bit about talk through, not down. And if you hop to the next slide, Jess is going to share our final principle. Difficult is not necessarily bad.
Okay, so this principle is about transforming strength, resilience, and deep wisdom. How these things are often gained through our most challenging experiences, and difficult psychedelic experiences are no exception. And I talked about this, in my intro as well. So this principle, again, it's not about trying to redirect someone's experience. It's not about judging it or placing value on it, right? We can't ever really know how hard something is for another person. Something that might be really challenging to me based on my history, lived experience, might not seem challenging to another person. So, and there's actually research that backs this up. There's one study that was done with about 2,000 adults who had reported having a challenging psychedelic experience, or like they called it a bad trip on mushrooms. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. And they were asked to report on their single most difficult experience. They said, or 84% stated that they had benefited from the challenging portions of their session. 60% rated their experience among the top 10 most psychologically, personally meaningful of their lives. And this shows that greater difficulty is associated with greater personal meaning, spiritual significance, and greater enduring increases well-being. So that's pretty cool. If you go to the next slide. Here are some foundations of support for difficult experiences. We practice normalizing, right? Like telling somebody it's okay to feel how they're feeling, or it's okay to not be okay. We can use intentional self-disclosure, right? Sharing a moment where we went through something that's relatable, but it's really important with self-disclosure, again, to check in and really think, like, is what I'm offering for me or for the person that I'm supporting right now? Will this benefit me or will this benefit them? And just to be attuned to that, and be mindful if we do decide to share something about ourselves. We also practice reframing and curiosity, and then validating people's feelings and really listening to their story. And on the next slide, here are some helpful phrases that can help us orient towards this principle. So, are there any aspects of yourself that want your attention right now? Have you ever had a difficult experience that led to more strength and wisdom? And what do you think this might be showing you, right? So really remaining curious and asking questions to allow more unfolding. On the next slide, there's a few more helpful phrases. And just, these are phrases that practice reframing. And again, it's just important that with reframing, that we are not denying the person's experience by how we're wording it. So it does take a certain amount of attunement when speaking in this way. And on the next slide, a few more helpful phrases. So if somebody says that this is one of my favorite examples, actually. This one always sticks with me, and it's just like helps me so much understand like how to say something. So if someone is freaking out on psychedelics because they think there are spiders all over their body, which sounds terrifying, I hope that never happens to me. You can say, that sounds terrifying to feel spiders all over your body, but I'm not seeing any spiders right now. So this doesn't deny their experience necessarily. It's a very, very thoughtful way of affirming their experience and then also helping them ground. So I love that example. Another good one is, you took a psychedelic and it appears to be working. So if we go to the next slide. Yeah, we just think it's really important to also name in this principle that difficult is not the same as bad, does not mean that there is no such thing as a bad trip, right? So we do acknowledge that harm can be done and happen during psychedelic experiences. And that's why these principles are so important. Things like considering set and setting, intention, and having support can be the difference between challenge that leads to growth and then challenge that leads to a traumatic experience. And not everything that people see and experience during a psychedelic is profound and meaningful or true or helpful. And some psychedelic experiences can be traumatic. So we just want to name that. And an example is if somebody is overdosed or dosed accidentally, this can be traumatic for them, right? It can lead to them feeling a loss of control. And loss of control and powerlessness are signs of a traumatic experience. And although peer supporters can help prevent additional harm, being supportive and protective and protecting by being supportive and protecting people in danger, it's absolutely possible to have a traumatic experience on psychedelics despite these measures. So just wanting to name that. And then we'll move to the last slide. Oh, we have a couple more slides. But yeah.
Go ahead. You can do your closing, and then I'll share with folks how to get involved.
Okay, that sounds great. So in closing, I just want to say that I feel like care is really a form of design. And because it's about how we shape an experience. And partially it's like the Zendo tent and how we set up the Zendo space so intentionally and create, with soft lighting and soft rugs and a place for people to kind of open into these experiences. But it's not just about physical space. We're also very, very much designing the presence and the quality of support that we're giving. And I also just see how the creative process mirrors these liminal spaces. There's a death and rebirth, a surrender before something new is born. And this is like exactly what we see in the Zendo over and over again. And it makes me think of back when I attended my very first Zendo Project training. And during this training, Sarah Gale, who is a longtime Zendo Project contributor, she reframed the word recreation. And she was speaking about recreational use of drugs at festivals. And she reframed the word to recreation and spoke to the truth that even when people come to psychedelics without conscious intent to transform, something inside them often is being recreated, whether they chose it to or not. And that really is the power of psychedelic substances. And that's why we must hold them with reverence and presence and care. Because when things get crunchy and confusing, and I promise you they will at some point, whether you've taken a psychedelic or not, if you haven't gone through something crunchy or confusing in your life already, tell me your secrets. And in these moments, what we'll really be reaching for is connection. We'll need to reach inward and we'll need to reach out to those around us, holding even a small light to help us return home. And we must remember the truths we find in the dark. And these principles are not just tools for crisis. They're lanterns lighting the way as we journey through life. They're a toolkit for transversing the inner terrain. And like I said earlier, the deeper we go into those places and the more magic we come out with, that's when we create from real authenticity. And I know that my fellow creatives who are here today know what I mean when I speak about the death and rebirth of the creative process and the liminal space where innovation emerges, the non-ordinary states where we find what wants to be created. I hope that what we shared here today empowers you to reach those places in yourself and design the future that we need. And then, thank you all for being here. If you want to stay in touch with us, if you go to the next slide, we just have a few options for continued connection.
Thanks, Jessa. Thanks for that wonderful closing. Yeah, just to share with you all how to stay connected, how to get involved, if you're interested in the SIT training. The best way to find out what we're up to and find out about volunteer opportunities and the events we're going to be at, if you're interested in having the opportunity to practice this skill set in real time, is to sign up for our newsletter, excuse me, which you can sign up for on our website, which you can see there in the link, zendoproject.org. And our newsletter once a month announces all the events we're doing. And then additionally, we have our Zendo SIT course that we're going to be offering next in July. And it's a 12-hour course spread out over a month. So it's every Monday for 3 hours in the evening. In the Pacific time, it's 4 to 7. And so just depending on your time zone, but generally evening to late evening. And then we'll offer a weekend SIT course in August. So a Saturday, Sunday. And then we'll also be at Psychedelics, Psychedelic Science 2025, which I know folks in the previous panel were talking about. We'll have a workshop there on Tuesday, and then we'll also have a Zendo sanctuary there. So if anybody's there and wants to come by or needs any support, we'll be there. So Super, super wonderful to be with you all today and to get an opportunity to share about the work we're doing. Yeah, just an honor to be here. So thank you so much.